Well, there was no worship today because it was icy and snowy and the roads in the parking lot just weren't going to be passable. Now, I'm not going to give you today's sermon holding up my cell phone. I'm not going to try to put on a worship service over the internet this week. This week's bulletins will work just fine next week. So we'll go ahead as scheduled starting next week. But this week I want to read you something. I said we were going to be reading through Matthew. And this week in Matthew, we got to the Sermon on the Mount, if you're following along. If you're not following along, that's fine. I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge today. The Sermon on the Mount begins with what we call the Beatitudes. And here's the Beatitudes. I'll read them to you. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So that is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. And this is the first time I've read the Sermon on the Mount when I finally realized that that's the sermon right there. That's all of it. I mean, yeah, it goes for 3 whole chapters, but that in essence is what Jesus is trying to teach us. Everything else after that is application. So everything after that you read, when the, don't murder anyone. I say don't be angry in your heart. Pray and forgive those who do all sorts of evil things against you. That is Jesus applying what he teaches in those Beatitudes. So what I've been doing the last couple days is I've been reading through the entire Sermon on the Mount, and every time Jesus gives his little section of teaching, after little section of teaching, after little section of teaching, I'm going back and I'm trying to see what beatitude that section of teaching applies to. So, let me go through this. So when it says, giving to the needy, be careful not to practice giving to the needy out in public. Don't let one hand know what the other hand is doing. I'm saying, I went back and I'm like, well, that's an example of not just being merciful to people, but it's also an example of being meek, of being poor in spirit, of hungering and thirsting for righteousness. So what I'm going to challenge you to do this week is read the Sermon on the Mount in every section of teaching that follows those Beatitudes. I want you to go back and I want you, when Jesus talks about prayer or fasting or storing up treasures in heaven or not worrying, go back and try to pick out which beatitude he's trying to apply in your life. He's trying to teach you in your life. So that's what I've been doing and I'm continuing to do today. And I would challenge you to do the same thing. So here I am. I'm out in the ice and in the snow to give you that challenge from Matthew. Even if you're not following along in the reading or not planning on being a part of the Bible study, take just a few minutes this week, go to Matthew chapter 5, read the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount, and see how Jesus applies it to our lives. All right? Hey, have a great week. Be blessed and be safe.